Hey, my name is Gaia Athena, and in this video I thought I would tell you some bookish facts about me, while also showing you some footage that I took of the snow and my dog yesterday. It snowed more since then, as you can maybe see. First off, I'm going to start by showing you where I like to read. I do a lot of reading in this chair behind the computer, and another place where I often read is on the sofa. I will say I don't have the TV on in the background for myself. I can't like watch TV and read at the same time, so I don't do that. I prefer it that is quiet while I read, but on occasion if I'm traveling or something like that, then I'll play music to fade out the background noises, and then if I really want to, I'll read. But in principle, I prefer it when if it's quiet when I read. Another place where I often read is my bed. It's a little bit messy right now. I don't often read on my bed, but sometimes I do. And the fourth place I often read is this sofa, which you'll recognize because it's in a lot of my videos. This is my my library room, and yeah, so this sofa is another place where I sometimes read. I use a notebook to take note of when I start reading a book and finish reading a book, and I have used various ones throughout the years. Sometimes I also take notes while I read, but really I should do this more than I do. When I read, I like to use bookmarks. I've got quite a few of them, and in this box there are even more. Sometimes I like to pick a special bookmark for a specific book, but sometimes I also just use which one I feel like my default one. I prefer to read shorter chapters in books rather than longer chapters. When I read, I like to stop preferably at the end of a chapter, but if I get distracted or if someone interrupts me, then I lose concentration and I tend to that immediately rather than finishing the chapter, and I don't mind then being interrupted halfway through. For example, if my dog barks or she wants something, or someone else wants to talk to me or anything like that, then I don't mind stopping. But if I stop out of my own accord, then I like to finish a chapter. I tend to read with stopping and starting because I can't concentrate for very long. I own a lot of books. I prefer to read physical books over ebooks, but I do have a Kindle. I have a first generation Paperwhite, and I like it. I just much prefer reading physical books. On my Kindle, I tend to read ebook only books, or usually like short stories or novellas, and I also read books on there by some authors that are ebook only, or their paper books are like really expensive or hard to find. Those I read as an ebook. But in general, if there is a physical book version available for like the usual prices, then I'll read that instead. I used to use my e-reader a lot more actually when I was still traveling to university, but nowadays I don't travel as much, and so then I prefer to read paper books. But for travel, I think an e-reader is quite handy. I don't use audiobooks because they are not my thing. With my disabilities, it is hard to process and concentrate on audio. I'd much rather read words on a page, preferably black text on a white page, because that is what I'm used to, what I'm most comfortable with. I find that much easier than to concentrate on audiobooks. It is hard for me to concentrate on a TV show or a film, or and also YouTube videos. So if I were to try just an audiobook with just words, that would not work. I have trouble concentrating if I'm having a conversation with somebody. So yeah, audiobooks are not for me, but I do think they are reading, and I'm happy so many people enjoy them. I prefer to read medium-sized paperback. Here is an example of this, although you can't quite see the size. Here are some books that I plan to maybe read sometime in the near future. And so this is a medium sized paperback. This is a small, what they call a small paperback. I think other people call that mass market. Hard covers with flaps. I don't think I have any here right now. Yes, I do. Here's an example. I generally don't like the dust jacket. I always fight with it. But I was so interested in this book that I bought the hardcover anyway. There was no paperback coming out at the time. Maybe it's still not. I don't know. I haven't read it yet. But I'm lately being alright if the hardcover is not too much bigger than the paperback. But particularly some fantasy books have like really big hardcovers that are quite big, and that is just, I can't easily hold that. Usually when I read books, I do that in the later afternoon. And books and reading is or are my biggest hobby, and I think it is also my big special interest. People with autism are often said to have special interests, and I think books are that for me. I love buying books, I love owning books. I love my book collection and touching books. I have a lot of unread books, but I also have a lot of read books. And I think the cover and spine and the back of a book, the size, the smell, the font, the colors and the feel of a book are all important to me. When I start reading a book, I always check how many pages it has. I need to know this before I start reading the book. If the book doesn't have page numbers, like for example some picture books don't come with page numbers, then I count the amount of pages after, because I don't want to accidentally spoil myself. Particularly with picture books, it is kind of hard to go through it and count the pages without accidentally like reading or looking at the illustrations. So then I do it after. But in the case of picture books, of course, you know that they're not going to be huge, and you can make an estimate based on how it looks. But yeah, I prefer to know the amount of pages of a book before I go into it. In the case of my e-reader, I will then go into the program I use to keep track of my book collection, and that will tell me how many pages an ebook has. Other times I go on Goodreads or on Amazon. I use CLZ Books on my phone to keep track of my books. But what I really do is use Book Collector, which is on the computer, and then I use the one on my phone mostly when I'm not at my computer, when I'm out and want to check if I have a certain book or not. This is not sponsored, by the way, in any way. I use Book Collector on the PC to keep track of my books, but yeah. I hate getting spoiled for a book I haven't read, and it's the same thing for movies and TV shows and video games. I try personally not to spoil anything to anyone unless I am 100% sure they have already read the book, or if they give me their explicit permission to spoil something for them. For example, I have had conversations with friends in which they were asking me after a book I just finished, and they specifically asked me, please tell me the whole story because I don't want to read it myself, but I would like to know. So in that case I have told them about the book, but in principle I really don't want to spoil anyone, because unless I have their explicit permission, because I really hate getting spoiled myself for something. So I love my book collection, and I also love going to the library. I love going book shopping. I usually only read one book at once. On occasion I have read multiple books at once. That is usually then like a fiction read and one information book or something like that. But most of the time I only read one book at once. This is just what works for me. I find it easier to focus on one book at once. If I read two books at once, I tend to get like things confused. If there are two fiction books, I tend to get the characters confused and things like that. But on occasion I do read multiple books at once. Well, that is all I can think of for now. I hope you enjoyed hearing these bookish facts and seeing some snow footage and things like that. And thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye!